bit of a disclaimer before we get started here. Let's keep in mind that this game is like Blade and Sorcery is decently violent on its own. There's a lot of blood and gore here, and NPCs getting dunked on like Diddy at a Lakers game. Okay, so little bit of viewer discretion is going to be advised here. Um, Also, quick kind of side note to go with the disclaimer. This is a little bit more than I would have done for like any one video thus far, but I actually had a lot of fun with it. It was cool to kind of jump into a game that I have so much admiration for and get to capture some footage. I had some stuff that was kind of old. I went in and I got some new stuff. And yeah, with the amount of fun that I've had like with this game as a whole over the time that I've had it, which is like a long time. Any less than like putting this much effort into it, just it didn't really feel like enough. And I wouldn't even say that this is like an immense amount of effort, but even this didn't feel like enough. So with that being said, you may see me doing kind of like longer videos about other stuff that I've had this much enjoyment with. But yeah, just kind of throwing that out there as like a side note. You might see more stuff like this. You might see less. I can't say for sure at this point in time. But yeah, that's kind of my little disclaimer slash update with me. Just gonna have to. There you go. But yeah, so Blade and Sorcery. It is a game. It is a game where you play. I mean, you don't have to be this man. You don't, have to be this person. But I am this person. And so let me figure out the keyboard stuff real quick. It takes a little bit of coordination, but we'll get there. Yep. You got it, bud. Nope. See those? Yep. Oh, Blade and Sorcery. He did it. Okay, Blade and Sorcery. Ah, gosh. For such a gorgeous game, we're going to break into it with, me being honest, right? Blade and Sorcery is a game that does not really offer much in terms of, like, plot or story. Period. But what it does, lack in plot, I will say it more than makes up for with, like, wacky, goofy, fun, pretty good level design, and honestly, really stunning environments with, lots of enemies, NPCs to just cover in the whole area in blood with. For the most part, there's not a whole lot of levels. Though they're really intricate, though they're really pretty, though there's a lot of design to them, and there's a lot of, like, oomph to be found in these things, a lot of there's not that many of them. There's not that many different levels and dungeons that you'll find yourself in, but those dungeons have like a never-ending change to their environments and the paths that you take in order to clear those dungeons. So like, despite the fact that like I may have played this dungeon a couple times, I would have to backtrack to kind of find my way around and get to that other entry or exit to an area that I didn't even know was there. So it is pretty clear, pretty instantly that like despite the fact that the dungeons more or less look the same, they're not going to be wildly different each run. They rarely play the same, and in the runs that you'll have of these dungeons, when you're going different routes, those routes are different looking from each other, obviously, but the same looking every time. And like depending on the level of difficulty that you've set at your little map at the very beginning there, depending on that difficulty and the randomizer that you get for that level or dungeon will kind of depend on like A, how long that level is, and B, how long it will, or like how differently it'll play out from the last time you did it. And see like how difficult the NPCs will be there. So there are different levels of difficulties between these dungeons, and yeah, for the most part, you don't really pick when you're in this full release story mode. You kind of just you have different options on the map. They'll change every time, and those will have ratings and difficulties that are relevant to your player level, how long you've been playing the game. But with that being said, there is 3 levels of difficulty here. There's enemies in the game that are like pretty easy, and for a good while you're gonna start with that, even through your first dungeon and probably your second dungeon, maybe even your third. You're gonna be you're gonna be fighting dudes that are in like pelts and have zero armor to them, and they're gonna be super easy. You know, you pick up a sword, you kind of just start swinging away. Eventually, you're gonna land a couple blows. You're gonna take out like a room full of people. You'll get a feel for the combat, because it does feel pretty good. But you're not going to be swinging your arms around as fast as possible, landing a million hits like you're some kind of like, superhero. There's weight to these items in game, and it does feel really natural. It does feel really good, but it does take a little bit of getting used to and knowing like the right speeds you want to swing your arms at to effectively take down these enemies. So the loincloth pelt guys, they're great. That's a good way to kind of get into it and figure out the speeds you want to swing at and all the good stuff. And then after a while, you've been playing the game for a little bit. You've cleared 3 dungeons or so, which, between each dungeon, you're going to play 3 different levels. So it's like 3 levels a dungeon, 3 levels a dungeon, etc. But you'll get to the medium guys. The guys who went they went out to the store. They were looking for some solid drip, but they only had the money for the Kirkland brand shit, right? they got good stuff. It works, but it is not, it works, but it's off brand. And those guys, they're going to be a little bit more difficult. They're wearing like leather armor. They've got, leather shields. They've got a little bit more like bite to them in terms of how much they'll attack you or like what kind of attacks they'll hit you with. And this is where you're going to see a little bit of the introduction for not just bows, because you'll see bows with easy, but you're going to see more bows and a little bit of magic when it comes to like the medium level difficulty. And that's good. That's good because you can fight against magic and arrows, but it does take a little bit of, getting used to, because, you'll be in the middle of sword fighting someone, and now they take a lot more hits. You got to put a little bit more work into it, and you got someone launching arrows at your spine, and so that's not fun. But yeah, you'll get used to it. You'll get a use of the flow and the way that the combat it works. It works really well once you start to pick up on how the flow of combat is. And then lastly, you're gonna come across your hard level difficulties. The real dudes here, the guys who just robbed that Nike store. Walking down the street, they're stunting on me harder than fucking Jimmy coming out of a goddamn thrift store back in 2012, right? Thanks, Macklemore. But for the most part, as long as you have more coordination than like a newborn who was born without an equilibrium, you'll have no trouble at least getting to the point where you have to start being good at combat, right? That's going to be your medium to hard level difficulty. Mostly hard level difficulty. By the time you're fighting these guys, you're going to be pretty accurate with the sword. You're going to be able to, get around all the metal plating armor that they have and the big shields and the high level damage weapons. Because at this point, they're stunned. They are loaded up and ready. And if you're going at a guy with plated metal armor with a sword, it's gonna be a fight. So as you can see, from the footage here, obviously, I boast hammer. I got a gravity hammer on me at all times, baby. Ain't nobody play with that. And even against the armored guys, that can be not the best weapon to have, but yeah, by the time you're there, you'll probably have at least more than one magic, and if you don't have lightning in your pocket, you're crazy. Because think about it. Yeah, there's a guy with metal plated armor. You put some lightning in your hand, you just grab his shoulder like it's Spider-Man, and you just say, "Hey," and it gets him every time. And once they're on the ground, their faces are easy to access, and that's how you take out the armored guys. But yeah, the combat in this game is pretty crazy. If I'm being very real with you, the AI of the NPCs is honestly kind of terrible. It's not great. It's not great. You'll find yourself in a lot of combat situations where there's NPCs like walking over rubble and they just kind of trip and fall. And a lot of the times, I follow the Zombieland double tap method. I might go over there and just double check that they're dead, right? Like it's or because they're probably not, so you gotta take them out. And sometimes it gets a little goofy. You might want a real challenge, but instead of getting a real challenge, 90% of the enemies you're coming across are just incapable of movement. It feels sometimes it does, especially in the earlier dungeons. It feels less like you are fighting like a castle full of guards. And more like Skyrim, you're just going ape shit in Whiterun, right? Imagine Whiterun with no guards. That's what some of the earlier levels of this game feel like, and yeah, so yeah, the AI in general is kind of bad, but yeah, it's hard to say anything about that when in general the combat is fun. Enemies are gonna swing at you. You are gonna have to block. You are going to have to get around their shields or maybe adopt some of the, sorcery, right, into your combat methods. And eventually you'll get pretty good at it. You'll get pretty used to, like, buffing your weapons and doing all the good stuff before you go and fight, whichever person, with what type of armor. I'm a huge person with gravity. That is, again, I'm stunting with that gravity hammer. I got gravity in my hands at all times. And yeah, you'll kind of figure out which weapon and which magic type that you might want to go for when you're fighting, like which kind of enemy. It's a lot of fun. I do a lot of bows for the lighter armored guys, because you really only have to nail them at least in the stomach or chest once or twice, and you're pretty much good with that. For the lighter armored guys, that's just hammer, probably gravity hammer, and I'm gonna like launch them all over the place. And then heavily armored dudes, I do like to have fun with it. I've gotten pretty, good at the game, so I can probably stab somebody in the face through their face shield missing helmet thing. But yeah, you'll get pretty good. You'll get used to it. It'll become fun. You'll find which styles that you like to fight which enemies with. And yeah. And before we get like too far into, I guess, anything else here, I did kind of want to just break out and say that, like, you will, no matter how kind of repetitive or kind of the same you'll find, like, the combat and the environments, like, the goofiness and the fun of the game and how immersive and, like, beautiful it can be, it really will keep you entertained. It'll keep you entertained for a long time. It's not one of those things where, it's very roguelike, right? It's meant to be played over and over and over again, so they plan for those contingencies and they keep it interesting. And so yeah, if you've never like jumped across the fucking room to just slap the shit out of a stupid person right in the face, or like pull out your gravity hammer to just launch them into the heavens like a reverse Zeus, I can't tell you anymore that you want to play this game. You want to experience that. Life is too short not to experience that, even if it's a video game. Yeah, I'm gonna break the, even if it's a video game, you want to experience this in your life. And so, like, I mean, just like, look at the level. Look at the level of badassery that you can be in this game. Just jump over, land on somebody, boom, right with a hammer or a sword, impale their skull. And or even better, you can literally just, once you get your gravity to a certain level, you can literally walk up to behind somebody and sneeze them into pieces. And it's a wonderful time. I know it sounds morbid. I know it sounds like, oh, I would never do that. But it's a fun time. Get over it. It's great. And I think that at this point it's important to, obviously you should know this by now, that this video is not like a comprehensive breakdown or a history lesson on blade and sorcery. It is really like, it's a less of you should buy this and more of a love letter to the time that I have spent in this world. Like, getting out with that, sometimes you go to bed at night, you have that little bit of energy before you go out. Maybe you want to hop into VR and just kind of work up a sweat real quick, or even just getting out frustrations that the real life brings. If there's anything out there to make you feel better after like a shitty day stuck at the office, with just some people are fine, but there's shitty people just sometimes telling you shitty things. You break away and immerse yourself at the end of the day into like this beautiful world with like amazing details, wide open, endless feeling environments that are just detailed to the very T. And then you fuck it up. You fuck it up by committing mass human atrocities and covering the whole area in the blood of your foes. And it is a wonderful feeling. Blade and Sorcery does it unlike any other game. And as you progress, you get stronger, you learn how to fight the tougher enemies, you feel even more of a badass because now you're accurate with certain weapons, and you find yourself, launching arrows across the room and taking somebody out with a headshot. That shit feels wonderful. It's a bow. There's no red dot. There's no scope. There's no nothing. You just kind of eyeball it, and hopefully you nail the bitch. And it's great. It's rewarding. You get pretty used to the combat. And it becomes really rewarding. And so yeah, and with that being said, I'm gonna bring up the only thing. Actually, you know what? First, we'll talk about boss fights. Because here's the thing. I'll never forget, the first time I ever loaded up this game and there was a boss fight in here. And I walked into this arena for the first time looking at this boss like, holy, there's no way. There's no way they did this. And I remember thinking to myself, like, how many boss fights will there be? Like, this is the first one, right? This is the first time I'm fighting this guy. He's a rock monster. That's awesome. But what's next? What's the next boss that I'm going to come across? And despite the fact that these bosses, kind of like, a lot of the other aspects of this game, play pretty similarly over and over and over again, I wasn't expecting it to quite literally be the same boss over and over and over again. Now, don't get me wrong. Dude kind of comes out with some new tricks every couple of times that you get here. So there are, you gotta kind of remember those tricks, and then, he doesn't forget them the next time you fight. He just has a bigger repertoire of ways he can kill you. But I'm gonna be honest with you here. I don't know how many times I've really died against this boss. You just kind of have to jump around him and break those little pink crystals that are on him, and then once you do, there's blue crystals on the wall that, they're putting up a force field on some of the pink things on him. So then you have to break those crystals, getting rid of the shield, and then you can go over and break the pink ones, and boom, he'll eventually die. But yeah, even though there's different tricks and different stuff that he does every couple of fights, I just wasn't expecting it to be the same over and over again. And yeah, again, it was a really wonderful experience the first time I did it, and the second time I did it, and the third time I did it, and the fourth time I did it, and eventually it does get a little cumbersome. But at this point now, I keep myself entertained with these boss fights by just kind of trying to make a point to do a no-hit run with them. If I can do a no-hit run, and then I can only use, the crystals that you have to break on the walls, I think you have to hit them 2 or 3 times before he'll kind of collapse over like that. And so yeah, I mean, eventually, if I can get no hit, plus I can nail all those with the most minimum required arrows possible, it's a fun time. And it's not so repetitive that you're gonna grow to hate it, but it is the kind of thing where eventually you start kind of being able to jump around them and jump on them and all sorts of stuff like that. But yeah. After you beat the boss of a dungeon, because I think I said this earlier, it's 3 levels, and then a dungeon, and then 3 levels, and then a dungeon. So, once you do finally get to the point where, you're beating a boss, he gives you a crystal right before he explodes, and then you take this crystal to this pedestal, and it does this. And this is pretty badass in VR. I don't want to say disappointed, but I was a little underwhelmed when I watched it on this screen here, because it is my lord, it's a religious experience in VR. It's crazy. You think the fucking ground is shaking underneath your feet. It's not. It's that cool. And so yeah, it's just that cool. But you take that crystal, you pick your favorite color, which is going to correspond with either vigor or stamina or lightning. You're going to get the Pokemon 3, right? You got lightning type, you got fire type, you got lightning type. And it's very cool because this stone that is right here in your house has been here for way longer than this leveling system has. And I remember there being such a long period of time where, you'd be going out to either hit an arena or maybe load something up, and yeah, there's just this spinning thing with a rock. And it just didn't make any sense for a long time. So, now they give you little rocks to put out here, and it does this really neat, really cool, very beautiful, leveling system. And I have to say, they did an amazing job with picking a leveling system that really fits this world. It is really, just like the last scene when you're at the pedestal, it is so cool when you're in VR. And you're looking at all the different tiers, because after you beat a boss, let's say a good handful of times, and you pick gravity more than once at that pedestal. You'll then take both of these stones back here, you will mend them together, and then you will have a bigger stone. And it's very cool. And it increases the amount of tiers that you have for that skill. And each tier has 3 different abilities per. And so it's a cool experience. They give you all sorts of different options to, even with the same type of magic, you end up doing all sorts of really cool stuff. And then the more that you start to upgrade more of your stones, like I have 2 or 3 vigor, so there's 2 there, you know, you get these subcategories between your like gravity and vigor. And those will give you, I mean, for the most part, I don't think any of them specifically have blown me away in terms of like how badass those subcategories are, but they are really great. And I really like how they can kind of use that to allocate maybe skills that don't really feel like they have anything to do with the main magic abilities. There's stuff in there that is just, I find so neat. And again, doing this in VR, it's a pretty wild experience. It's a religious belief. You'll play it once, you'll never forget it. You'll fight bosses over and over and over again. You'll get a whole bunch of stones. You'll take those stones back to your crib and look at it. Look at that shit. It's so cool. I cannot express. I'm not trying to glaze the shit out of it, but when you're seeing this first person, even though you're on a VR set and it's a game, it's incredibly fucking neat, and it's incredibly fucking cool. And you will find yourself coming back to this, even if you take month or 2 month, 3 month, 4 month breaks, whatever you take in terms of, you know, how long it's been since you played this game. You'll probably come back at some point because VR is expensive and you spent a lot of money on it. There's no going back now, right? So there you go. But with that being said, yeah, you know, this is just my love letter to Blade and Sorcery. You know, I've been here for a really long time. Like, one of the cool things about my experience personally is that, like, with this game, I got it way back when I very first got a VR set, which I have an HTC Vive, the first HTC Vive. I've done some upgrades to it, but whatever. You know, I've had this game for a very long time, years at this point, and I've been able to really watch it grow from, like, the maybe baby that it was to the rock hard Giga Chad that it has grown into. You know what I mean? Like, it went from nothing more than, like, a little arena fighter with, like, endless fighting, and magic that you were just given, you didn't have to work for, with way less abilities, to like actual large scale dungeons and like a leveling system that fits the world, insanely well put together environments. Yeah, you know, other than, again, I think the one kind of gripe that I have here is that, you know, there's a little bit of less variety with bosses that I'd like to see, and I'm a little worried that because we're at the full game update that we might not get any more of those bosses. But I don't know, you know, I really can't wait to see what the developers are going to put in here, because, you know, they've shown time and time again that when it comes to these you know, updates that they push, they're like fully committed to not even just like this as a game, but as this world that they've kind of created here. You know, they've put it together piece by piece over a really long span of time, and I've been here to kind of see it all. And so, yeah, you know, I love this game. I love what it is. I love all the stuff that they've done with it. You know, don't even get me started. I didn't want to break too much into it, but I will say here that much like Bethesda games, this game was really, really carried by the mod community that was here to support it, and the people who, you know, that supported those mods even through the updates. They did a great job. Everybody kind of made this game that, especially in the beginning, could get incredibly repetitive. They kept it super fresh, and they gave you all sorts of insane options and fun packs to play with. You know, just like a Bethesda game, honestly. Like, obviously this is not a Bethesda game, but just like that same level of experience that you're gonna get, that's what you're gonna find here. So, to wrap everything up, this has been my love letter to Blade and Sorcery. I appreciate you fine people for, you know, sticking around even this long. I doubt anyone has. Probably until the end of history, no one will. But just the fact that you're still here to listen to the mad ramblings of an autistic man. Not really. But you know, I appreciate you folks. You know, I do hope to do a couple more long form videos like this. I'll try to get a little bit more imaginative to where how I do the commentary and whatnot. But with that being said, you know, keep doing your stuff, people. I'll catch you in the next one.